Time today is the 19th of February 2021, and the time is about 12 or 13 minutes past 8, and I am having to make this COP24 witness statement in the form of an audio file or a video file, simply because of the shortness of time remaining before the commencement of the final hearing. And I'm going to have an opportunity to write things up and present it to the court. And so therefore, this is my last opportunity to express my issues and concerns in how the present situation has transpired. I have made numerous adjournment applications during the week, all being rejected on grounds that they are lacking any validity or lacking any merit. Yet I feel that they do have merit, otherwise I wouldn't have made the adjournment applications. I feel that everything's being rushed and railroaded through. I wanted to take this opportunity to address a couple of the points, one of which is what is being sought presently by the applicant local authority. I mean, the orders that have been drafted, ready to be sanctioned by the court, are highly draconian, and a clear violation of my liberties and my mother's liberties and our right to a private family life. I mean, in essence, they're barring me from seeing my mother at a time when people are struggling to meet their loved ones in care homes. I'm here with my loved one, and yet I'm being barred by the local authority from having any regular contact with my mother or a daily contact with my mother. And it's just shocking what has been requested by the local authority, which is now being considered by the courts. I mean, this is quite clearly a malicious and vindictive order that's being sought by the local authority, and the situation with the local authority has always been the same. I mean, clearly myself and the local authority have had a very conflicted relationship ever since, many years, ever since my brother died, or even before that. I've held the local authority fully accountable for my brother Nazim's death. And so for them to now state that they want to take care of my mother as an egalitarian thing is, highly dubious. And I'm just at a loss of what I can say to convince the judges that, this is a wrong course of action. In essence, I'm being made homeless after having all my finances stripped of me, and I'm just struggling to understand what crime I've committed. All I have done is being highly critical to the local authority for its systemic failures, which I believe as a citizen I have a right to do, and a ratepayer, because otherwise, how would the local authority, improve its procedures? I feel victimized in the sense that I have raised issues and complaints and followed all the policies and procedures, and yet here I am being victimized and punished unjustly simply for looking to care for my family members. And if I have asked for £1 million a week for caring, which obviously I hold on to, you don't have to pay it. If it's something that you don't want to pay, you don't have to pay it. Obviously I feel aggrieved as a carer that I'm being exploited, and that's the only way I can express it. But look at the actions that have been taken by the local authority in response to my claim. The taking the vehicle, getting me out of this house, and just to address the issue of my mother's tenancy. Quite clearly my mother does not speak English. The only reason that she holds this tenancy is that she was the predecessor, my sister Shahida B. Hussain, and my mum put themselves on the housing association list, or waiting list. They waited about 10 years, and so it was my mother's name that was on the waiting list. And so when the opportunity arose, and I pushed the local authority and everybody else to rehouse the family because they were overcrowded, it only made sense that my mother's should remain the sole tenancy holder. In addition to this, quite clearly a 5-bedroom house with a capacity of eight people, as they say, it's not going to be on one person's name. It's not going to be on 8 people's names or 5 people's names. There's only one tenancy holder, primarily the head of the family. And it was a decision that I made that my mother should remain the tenancy holder. and remain the sole tenancy holder because it was just an easier administrative thing to do. Later on, I've tried to put the tenancy onto my brother's name, who has an equal right to this property because the housing waiting list allocations based on a point system, and my mother wouldn't have qualified on her own. The only reason that she qualified for social housing was because of a point system, which also included my father, my brother Nazim, and my brother Talib. And so therefore now, in essence, by or saying that because my mother's the only sole tenancy holder, that we have no right. I mean, quite clearly, if we've been living in a place, my understanding was that even squatters have rights if they've been living and dwelling in a place for over 10 years or 12 years. But what's more important is that since the local authority were made aware that my mother was living in Oldham, they've proceeded to put the council tax on my name. So on the one hand, I now have no rights of residency or to this property, but yet at the same time, when they knew that my mother was temporarily residing in Oldham, they chose to put the council tax on my name, which was obviously a point of grievance because the final decision regarding my mother's residency had not been concluded. Yet it seemed, from the local authority's perspective, it was a foregone conclusion that my mother was going to remain at Oldham and the mobility vehicle needed to be removed, and steps were being made beforehand, before the final hearing. And so, it's a point of grievance that the local authority chose to put the tenancy in my name. Now, moving on from this, I mean, there's allegations that I've broken court orders or not abided by court orders. This is just not correct. I mean, the only court order that you can say that I didn't abide by is when I moved my mother back. But there was extenuating circumstances to her coming back to live in Bradford. Primarily was that on the 26th of February, I told everybody that I'm seeking permission to bring my mother back with my sister. And nobody responded. That's negligent on the other party's behalf. They could have objected or put any forward any arguments. They chose just to ignore it, and that alone would have not have necessitated me bringing my mother back. But, I got a letter from Judge Geddes saying that there's no outstanding issues, and clearly this was an outstanding issue. In addition to this, we had a death in the family on the 10th of March, where we had to attend this funeral. And then there was circumstances, and in a combination with all these circumstances, and my sister, and myself and my family, exhibiting COVID-19 signs. So therefore, it was thought best that my mother should remain here. And it was nothing, I mean, clearly there was a risk to life here. Those are the only reasons that order of my mother remaining in Oldham was not adhered to. And I was looking to engage with people, and nobody was looking to engage with me from the local authority. So, this idea that I have been consistently and persistently breaking orders is just simply not correct. There was one order where I brought my mother back, and quite clearly it was in her best interest. My mother is deteriorating. My sister was struggling on her own, and particularly the local authority were looking to remove the mobility vehicle. It's, the only reason that I made an emergency application on the 6th of January 2020 was because of attempts to remove the mobility vehicle, and those attempts continued throughout. Quite clearly, the mobility vehicle can be removed if my mother's not residing here. So I felt I was being staged and put into a position like this. Now, so that's the circumstances in regards to why my mother was moved here. In relation to the tenancy situation, I'm saying that I have no license here. I don't understand what license I need. I mean, we're a family. We've been living here, myself, my mother, my brother, my father, since 2004. And now all of a sudden, because of some sort of technicality that I'm going to be barred from visiting this area or visiting my mother, it's just total lunacy. Quite clearly, very startling, alarming, and distressing. that, I'm not going to be able to see my mother anymore and become homeless simply because of what the local authority are trying to achieve. Now, this situation as I've explained, doesn't have to be sort of draconian. My sister's willing to come and live with us and provide personal care. We simply don't want, outside agencies coming in provide care for my mother, because it's not something that she would want. It's not something, especially given what's happened to one of our siblings, namely Nazim Hussain. We're quite capable and competent to provide the support that my mother needs. The people from the BRI have come. They've seen my mother. She's not exhibiting any adverse signs. There's just coughing situation that I was concerned about. And so, and the place is as you can see, the place is very, very tidy, nicely put together. And we're here to be here, looking after her 24/7. She's going to be around family. Now, if the order is granted, namely to have me removed, my sister's not going to, she can't cope on her own. She's not going to stay here. My brother Talib's not going to stay here. And so therefore, in essence, the only person that's going to be here is my mum on her own in this house whilst we're made homeless. I would ask for proportionality and caution in regards to the orders that are now being sought. Because this is simply not acceptable. Now, moving on from this, I've received the order regarding the playlist of Esther Lee Salaru. Now, I'd like to say, first of all, I've removed that playlist. The only reason I put it up there was to give yourself evidence. There's no means for me to upload video evidence, which, as you can see, I'm heavily reliant upon. And most of the information on regarding Miss Esther Lee Salaru is surprisingly available freely online. So it's not confidential information. It's information that I've openly searched on and found online, even if she hasn't given me it. So, the idea that I've got information that Miss Salaru has not granted me is, ridiculous. I bet Miss Salaru is quite surprised at how much information is out there about her. So once again, just to summarize, I would like, obviously, the orders that the local authority are seeking not to be granted, because it places, a great deal of strain on the family. But in essence, like I said in my statement, the families are being asked to break down, and so the local authority can simply come in and fulfill their duty of care, as they say, in providing personal care. They don't even have a package of care. One of the problems I had previously was that the local authority were providing the best service, which is designed for 6 weeks, only 6 to 8 weeks. That's what the staff told me, and yet it was lingering on a year later. Obviously, one of the problems that the local authority have is they don't want me to be the carer, but yet that's not what my mother wants. My mother wants me to care for her. She's indicated that in several recent interactions with the professionals that, look, she's quite happy, she's comfortable, she wants her son to care for her. So it's just simply cannot be the case that what the local authority wants, the local authority gets, because the Court of Protection simply will adhere to anything and everything that the local authority says. That simply cannot be right. There are other extenuating factors. My other siblings will not come and visit my mother. It's nothing to do with myself, and they've not even made any inquiries since the time that my mother's been here about her health or well-being. They can contact my sister Zaida or contact me directly. They're simply not concerned about my mother. Myself, my sister Zaida are, and we're providing care for her. And we're just really struggling to understand why that is, not being prioritized or given any credence. And yet, what the local authority are asking for, these draconian sanctions and restrictions, and trying to get me removed from the property and making me homeless, it's quite obvious that those are malicious in nature, and yet these malicious actions are being sanctified through the Court of Protection. I've tried my best to adhere to all the orders that have been put in place and the restrictions that have been placed upon me, but there's a fine line between adhering to orders that I think are reasonable and those orders that I feel are infringements of my own civil liberties, one of which is me recording things. I mean, there's nothing wrong with me recording things in my own house or my own environment, or especially when I'm engaging with the social workers who persistently lie. Now, what alternative would you like me to deploy in order to circumvent their lying, because they're not going to stop lying. And those lies have cost me everything. So I'm really fearful that, this, if the order is granted, this is going to be a great deprivation of liberty of my mother, myself, my sister, my brother, and just simply not required. We have a working solution. It's been working fine for a long time, and it's not necessary for the local authority to intervene like this. They were quite happy for my mother to be residing in Oldham and my sister to care for her. I even told them in February 2019 that, look, we do want to go private. We don't want your support services, and they were quite happy to do this. It just seems that everybody's trying to make my mother a ward of the state so they can financially profiteer from her, and this is not acceptable. My mother is 87 years old. How much life has she got left in order to be degraded and humiliated like this at the end of her life? This is not acceptable, and I would encourage the courts not to grant the order of the local authority for today, and look to have the case dismissed, because now on the 15th of January I have raised 2 points. One was regarding recording in court, and the second point was regarding dismissing the case on grounds that no permission had been sought or granted for the application to proceed. Now I have always looked to seek permission. It's the local authority that didn't even seek the permission, appropriate permission, and that was not even addressed subsequently following that hearing on the 15th. That why was point 2 not addressed regarding dismissing the case? There is absolutely no reason that this case, welfare case, should be continuing to the local authority's advantage. My understanding at the first time of the hearing before Judge Bell in April 2019 was that they had concerns. I should allow the assessment, and once those concerns have been alleviated, the welfare application would stop. But it seems that this welfare application never stops. They did the assessments. The social workers at the time, Pip Nari and Shazi Bashir, assured me that they were satisfied. I then anticipated their case to stop, but it just didn't stop. And then in December, once again, they tried to move my mother to an assessment centre, and then did an assessment, completed the assessment, said they were satisfied now. So then the case should stop, and that was the argument that I was making on the 20th of January 2020, is that, look, if they're satisfied, stop this case. But yet, yet the case was still prolonged to a multidisciplinary hearing for the 11th of February, where the decision was once again taken that my mother should permanently reside with my sister without a support in place, and looking to circumvent my support that I was assisting my sister with. That was just not acceptable. And then towards the end of February 2020, I made the counter offer of my mother and my sister coming back and we could live together. That was not addressed, and then it just seems that the can's been kicked down the road all this while, and now all of a sudden, everything's going to be railroaded through to the local authorities' advantage. This is totally, insane, not acceptable, and I once again, I don't think I can say any more profusely that this is not a reasonable or proportionate thing to do, where banning me from seeing my own mother, and banning me from a house that I've been living in for over 12 years, without an eviction notice or anything like this, and especially when I've not done anything wrong. They've convicted me of fraud for financial abuse. I've not been financially abusing anybody now. I've been using my own resources in order to facilitate my mother's care subsequently, and yet here I am being persecuted. So I think that's all I need to state in this witness statement, is that these are the facts of the situation, that my mother's being happily cared for to a high quality by myself and my sister, and it's not necessary for us to be vacated from our mother's life, because she will ultimately be left with no family member to provide her with care, because my other siblings, Shaida, B, and Halda and Adalat, have played no active role in the welfare proceedings, because they could have raised their concerns or involvement or offered their resources. They simply are not willing to look after my mother or give her maybe an occasional visit, but they could do that now. I've never stopped them, and for them to, for us to be removed from my mother's life, which she clearly wants and has a right to have a family life, namely myself, my brother Talib, and my sister Zaida, to have us removed from here, it's just insane. it seems insane to me, and doesn't seems to make any sense at all. And so I'm at a loss of words when I'm dealing with such a bizarre, insane and bizarre situation where the local authority are basically asking for my removal and restrictions and sanctions simply because I wouldn't allow carers to come in, and that's not the case. I said I'm gonna record everything, and there's nothing wrong with me recording things for my own safety and protection. But yet that's something that the local authority are not happy with, and so simply because the local authority are not happy, I am now being victimized like this. This is not acceptable, and I urge the courts please to have this case thrown out and not to grant the local authorities orders, because this is basically going to decimate our family life, and it's not acceptable at all. Thank you.